My name is Angus Ross, and I like to say that we bend, mould, sculpt and fold wood. As a discipline we make predominantly furniture, but I mean, and furniture and sculptural artworks, and sort of, I always say functional artworks, so I tend to say. So a lot of the public work tends to be, although they're sculptural, they have a functional element to it. Really. I mean, I trained as a designer, and I always consider myself really as a designer, as opposed to an artist actually, sort of, because I think the functional element, there is always an element of function there, and there's always a brief that I'm trying to satisfy. But within our practice, we do specialise in a lot of steam bending and bending wood, really. So most of the work that we do involves sourcing our timber, buying it in green, and using it sort of green, and folding it and bending it into various shapes and forms. Steam bending it's a great process. It's also a very ancient process. Essentially, it's a process where you saturate the timber with steam. And from a technical point of view, if you consider timber like a bunch of straws, which are held together by glue, the steam sort of penetrates down the straws and softens the glue in between the straws, the fibres effectively, which means that when it's saturated, you can take it out of the saturation, the steam point, and bend it, but you have about a minute to do it. And effectively the straws then slide over each other, and by sliding over each other when the glue's soft, that allows the movement. And then as soon as it starts to harden up again, which is as it dries and sort of cools down, then the sort of lignin between them sets it in position. So it's a process that sort of works very much like that. But consequently, it's kind of dependent on timber species. And like oak and ash are probably the two best from this country, and also on the nature of the timber. You know, timber with lots of knots and timber with lots of blemishes won't bend, so you need quite nice straight-grained timber to bend things satisfactorily. Especially as we do, where we do quite a lot of complex bending in more than one plane, so it goes up and over and things like that too. Where we have a small patch of 50 acres of oak woodland, so we've been taking timber from there and using that green, in fact, to do some steam bending to make products with, really. And it's something I'm quite passionate about, really. So we've already taken ash and oak from some of the local estates, who are 2 or 3 miles away. Because a lot of these trees would otherwise, which are either windblown or need to be taken down, would otherwise just be firewooded. Because for individual trees, there isn't a sort of commercial gain to be had. So what I'm very keen on is saying that we can actually take these trees and use them and produce a high quality product out of what effectively would be sort of firewood otherwise, really. So I think structure is one of the main forms of inspiration that I like, really. And by structure I mean the way things are put together in 3 dimensions. I find a lot of inspiration sort of in bridges, a lot of mechanical work, really, sort of bridges and nature, the way sort of, you know, the way different elements combine to create a piece, really. And it's also always looking at the mass and void of a piece, so that when you're looking at something, you're not just considering what you're putting in there, but also what isn't there. So the space and the void, you know, the space and the piece itself. So it's always kind of an interrelationship between those two elements. And a lot of the time it's the interplay of these things which I find interesting, really. And again, working with furniture, where you quite often have a starting point, like if a seat needs to be sat on, you know, that you've always got a starting point of that. And essentially, I'm a believer that if you make furniture, it does need to be comfortable rather than just be sort of just sculptural. So from that point of view, you know, you have a starting point, you have a few key things to start with. But, I mean, it's a different way of looking at things. I always think if a table, if essentially at its very basic level, is just a surface, a suspended surface for that. And if you start thinking for things like that, and a chair is basically something that supports the body in a position. So rather than thinking of a chair, it has to have 4 legs or something, if you think of it has to be something that supports the body, then it quite often frees up your way of thinking. And then you can investigate sort of different structural ways of doing that to create the piece. I think as a sort of designer and artist, as you move forward like that, it's sort of, you need different areas to inspire you, really, and you always have different things that come in. And for me, a lot of them, it can be process driven, as well as, you know, sort of looking at the end of the aesthetic. You know, like working with processes and seeing and pushing them further forward and seeing what you can do with different techniques as well.